You see this letter right here? That letter came out late Wednesday afternoon. And in doing so, it may be the match that lights a fuse on a constitutional crisis. What are the contents of said letter that make it so explosive? Hang on, folks. We're going to get into all this in just 1 second.
My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk.
It's no great secret that Texas Governor Greg Abbott and President Joe Biden have been at loggerheads for quite some time now over the question of immigration at the southern border. Abbott is of the opinion that thousands upon millions of illegal immigrants are crossing his border, and you really can't blame him for having that opinion, especially given the preponderance of evidence and his own eyesight. Biden, on the other hand, claims that he's simply opening the doors to America and allowing immigrants to come here from all countries and have a chance at the American prosperity. Well, as you all are fully aware, things have been escalating to the point that on Tuesday, the Supreme Court of the United States handed down a decision that said that the Border Patrol could go in and cut razor wire that the state of Texas had installed at the border to prevent illegal immigrants from crossing over. Well, today, the governor of Texas has responded by way of letter telling the Biden administration what he thinks of that idea. And it has set off a major stir and could be one more step on the road to a constitutional crisis between the sovereign state of Texas and the federal government of the United States. So let's take a look at that letter, look at some of the laws surrounding it, and see if we can get a handle on what's going on. And then the wise guy in the wide brim will give you his take on the whole thing. We start with this very infamous letter. From the desk of Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, we read the following. The federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the United States has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states, including immigration laws on the books right now. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them. The result is that he has smashed records for illegal immigration. Despite having been put on notice in a series of letters, one of which I delivered to him by hand, President Biden has ignored Texas's demands that he perform his constitutional duties. President Biden has violated his oath to faithfully execute immigration laws enacted by Congress instead of prosecuting immigrants for the federal crime of illegal entry. President Biden has sent his lawyers into federal court to sue Texas for taking action to secure the border. President Biden has instructed his agencies to ignore federal statutes that mandate the detention of illegal immigrants. The effect is to illegally allow their en masse parole into the United States. By wasting taxpayer dollars to tear open Texas's border security infrastructure, President Biden has enticed illegal immigrants away from the 28 legal entry ports along the state's southern border, bridges where nobody drowns, and into the dangerous waters of the Rio Grande. Under Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 different states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people all across the United States. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the U.S. Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. That is why the framers included both Article 4, Section 4, which promises that the federal government shall, quote, protect each state against invasion, and Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, which acknowledges, quote, the state's sovereign interest in protecting their borders, Arizona v. United States, 567 U.S. 387 419, 2012, Justice Scalia dissenting. The failure of the Biden administration to fulfill the duties imposed by Article 4, Section 4 has triggered an Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, which reserves to this state the right of self-defense. For these reasons, I have already declared an invasion under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, to invoke Texas's constitutional authority to defend and protect itself. That authority is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. The Texas National Guard, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and other Texas personnel are acting on that authority as well as state law to secure the Texas border. Greg Abbott, Governor of Texas. Well, as you might imagine, that letter has caused quite the stir. So I want to take a few minutes to take a look at some of the constitutional bases of this and also look at some of the news surrounding it. So we'll go to Fox, and they have this headline. Abbott declares Texas has right to self-defense from migrant invasion amid feud with Biden administration. Going into the article written by Adam Shaw, we read the following. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is touting a right of self-defense from migrant invasion at the southern border as the state fights a prolonged battle with the Biden administration. The federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states, a lengthy statement by the Texas Republican says. The executive branch has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states, including immigration laws now on the books. Abbott is currently fighting multiple legal battles with the administration. The federal government has threatened legal action over Texas' seizure of Shelby Park near Eagle Pass, while lawsuits are ongoing over the administration's cutting of razor wire set up by Texas and the establishment buoys in the Rio Grande. The Supreme Court this week found in the administration's favor when it granted an emergency appeal to allow agents to keep cutting border wire set up by Texas along the border. Texas this week published images of its strengthening physical barriers along Eagle Pass. The administration has also sued over a recently signed law that allows Texas state and local officials to arrest illegal immigrants. The administration has accused Texas of interfering with federal control over immigration and border security and has said it is putting agents and migrants in danger. Okay, let's talk about this. As I said at the beginning of the video, it's no secret to anyone that the state of Texas and the administration, particularly the Biden administration, have been at a fight over who controls the border and how best to do it. However, I've got to side with the state of Texas on this one because, frankly, they have valid constitutional grounds to be doing what they're doing. Now, part of the letter referred to two parts of the U.S. Constitution, and I want to read those very carefully. Take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. I take you to Article 4, Section 4, and it reads as follows. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. Most of us remember that clause, but it's the second part that most people forget. And shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, most people remember the provision that says that the federal government is supposed to make sure that each state government is guaranteed a republican form of government. Most people have glossed over the fact that there's also a guarantee that the federal government will protect the states against invasion. And the reason it's glossed over is, more often than not, you never have to have it invoked. Much like the questions surrounding now, should President Trump be excluded from the ballot on the basis of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, because, frankly, it's never been invoked in over 100 years. But laying that aside and getting back to this, the guarantee against invasion is still there. Now, what happens if you're the state of Texas and you feel like the guarantee against invasion is not being held up by the federal government? Well, there is one other constitutional provision that Texas is relying on in terms of their actions in the current constitutional crisis. I take you to Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty on tonnage, keep troops, or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded or is in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Now, I want to read that last part again to make sure everybody gets the full gist of this. Unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit delay. And that is the principal argument constitutionally that the state of Texas is making in all this. The people who are coming to cross the southern border and are not even going through the proper ports of entry are entering the country illegally. And given the numbers and given the purposes, Texas is arguing this is an invasion. And frankly, I don't disagree with the state of Texas. Now, that's not because it's got a Republican governor or a quasi-conservative government down there. It has to do with the practical reality. Every day we see images from places like Eagle Pass, Texas, and the Darien Gap and other areas along the southern border, and we see thousands upon thousands daily, weekly, monthly, and now into the millions yearly crossing our southern border with complete impunity. And the federal government is doing little or nothing to stop it. Some would argue that the federal government is complicit in this. Laying that aside, what if you're Texas, what do you do? Well, we've got to do something. They're calling it an invasion, and therefore, on the basis of the fact that they're calling it an invasion, they believe they have constitutional leg to stand on. Again, I don't disagree with Texas's interpretation of the Constitution. Each state is guaranteed protection against invasion. That's Article 4, Section 4. Each state is not allowed to enter into war unless actually invaded or such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. That's the responsibility of the federal government. But if the federal government's not doing anything, then the states have a right to self-defense, and that's what Abbott's claiming. Now, on the other side of that coin comes the Biden administration. They're going to argue, no. As I said earlier, we're simply processing, immigrants coming to the country. We are the southern border is the new Ellis Island. We want people to come into our country. We want them to be able to enjoy the fruits and blessings. They're claiming asylum. That's all they're doing. The huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Well, again, I have a hard time swallowing that line of bull, but anyway. So where's all this going to wind up? I have no idea, but I tell you one thing. We're headed for a serious problem here because Texas is claiming they're being invaded, the feds are doing nothing about it, and are invoking a constitutional right to self-defense, which I think they have. The Biden administration's arguing, nope, you do not have the authority to do this. You don't control immigration. We do. But that sort of begs a very interesting point. When the federal government will not enforce its own laws on immigration, and particularly protecting the country against illegal immigration, what are the states along the border supposed to do? No one ever envisioned something like that because no one ever thought there'd ever be a day when the federal government would not only not enforce its own laws, but in the opinion of some, may be actively encouraging immigrants to cross the border illegally. So where all this shakes out, I have no idea. But I'll tell you one thing, this is headed for one hell of a fight in the courts, and in the end will wind up back at the Supreme Court. Conservatives are disappointed with the ruling on Tuesday, and I can't say that I blame them. But I'm willing to give the court a very, very little bit of grace on this. It was an emergency docket question that they were asked to rule on. When they get a full brief explaining each state's position and the position of the federal government, I'm not so sure that the Biden administration is going to be happy with the next time the Supreme Court rules on this. But I have been known to be wrong in the past. So we'll see how all this shakes out. In the meanwhile, do me some favors. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please do so. Number 2, please hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when new material, be it a video or a live stream, is coming out. Number 3, leave a comment below. Number 4, share the video around. And finally, give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.